Okay, once again, we're talking about learning and behavior analysis. We just got done talking on the last video about the law of effect, saying that learning states that the power of a stimuli, once you've been stimuli, something in an environment that happens that causes a response, which causes our behavior, is increased by a reward and weakened when it's not followed by a reward. So let's talk about a little bit about positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is a reward. Positive reinforcement is a reward. We talked about B.F. Skinner. We talked about that pigeon. Whenever he hit that button that had the food, that was positive reinforcement. Now, Skinner did something else. He also added a negative reinforcement. I didn't want to tell you about this earlier, okay, because I want to tie this in. So you have positive reinforcement, you have negative reinforcement. So then Skinner did another thing, and this is kind of like, you'll be like, oh, poor pigeon, okay? But then he put a shock in one of the buttons. So one of the colors was a shock, one of the colors was food, and the other color was a nothing. So he left the blue as the food for a while, boom, 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 and the animal associated blue with food, and every time it saw blue. So then he put in 3 different colors. So now there wasn't a blue button at all. So what did the pigeon do? The pigeon just started pecking at one and then another. Actually, he started pecking where the blue button was, which was in the 3rd position. And then nothing happened. But then in the middle one, Skinner put a shock. So when the bird pecked on it, it got shocked. And it was like, whoa, and it ruffled its feathers and said, what in the world's going on? So you would think that it might not push another button. Okay? You would think that it might not push another button. Because what's the learning here? Okay? The learning is maybe pushing a button is going to cause a problem. But the bird went ahead. It was really significant. The bird went ahead because the bird really needed the response of food, pushed the other button and it gave him food. But then the pigeon from then on would never push the middle button, even if it was blue, even if it was the color of the food, the pigeon no longer would push the middle button. Because the thinking side of the brain says that button's going to shock you. It's going to do bodily harm to you. Okay? So, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. Okay? So isn't that, it's fascinating. That's fascinating. And that bird would never touch that middle button. Now, once again, these are environmental things. Okay? So now another thing Skinner did was Skinner said, okay, let's have this, when this bird has babies, let's put the bird through the same experiments and let's see if they know them before they try them. And they didn't. It was all, see, that was a big thing back in the time. It's like, okay, is this programmed in the brain and will this be passed on to genetics? No, that wasn't genetics, that was environmental. Wow. Now, is it possible that through natural selection an animal can pick certain things? And the answer is yes. If the other animals die, until pretty soon the only animal that lives is the animal that does whatever that stimuli is. So, once again, positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement, big part of our behavior. You know, somebody that's been encouraged, somebody that's been discouraged. Learning. We learn to love, we learn to hate. You mean we can learn emotions? And the answer is yes. Do we have emotions no matter what? Yes. Now, did you hear what I said? We have emotions no matter what. But can we learn emotions? We don't learn emotions as much as we learn conditions of emotions. Oh, wow. So what's the problem if something that should make us happy makes us sad? Well, then whatever that is that ordinarily makes us happy might make us sad. A great example of this are clowns. Years ago, kids would see clowns and they would think happy and laughing and the clown is funny. As a matter of fact, you wouldn't even be scared of a clown. You see a clown as somebody who's inviting and encouraging. Well, what happened in the next generation? You know, people that are 50, 60, 70 right now, okay, might have had fun time with clowns when they were little, but people that are kids right now, they're kind of scared of clowns. And if you're 20 or 30, You might be scared to death of clowns. Why? Well, think about the movies that we have. We got all these scary movies, so you begin to associate this clown with the yellow hair or red hair and the nose. As a matter of fact, McDonald's started getting away from Ronald McDonald because they had an association of clowns that was good, and then Ronald McDonald in McDonald's became a bad image because kids were scared of clowns. Movies began to depict the clown as the bad guy, or even the murderer, or even the person that went out and in even little Disney, even kid movies. There's a movie where a clown goes out and kidnaps dogs, and he's just not a good guy. So isn't it interesting the way now we have positive and negative reinforcement? So it's all about your association. So clowns used to be a positive reinforcement. Now a lot of people, they're a negative reinforcement. Great example. I want to talk to you about some more conditioning. These are some items these are terms that have just really come into the forefront. Even some research back in 2014, which for research is extremely new. Okay, really proven research that we've kind of suspected some things, but we didn't have names for them. We have escape conditioning. An example here: escape conditioning is to use something to avoid some type of stimuli or response. So if it's raining outside, if I get an umbrella, that's escape conditioning. Why hold the umbrella up? To avoid getting wet. That's called escape conditioning. Then we have avoidance conditioning. We want to avoid a negative reinforcement, okay? We want to avoid a negative reinforcement, but it helps us with something else. So what happens when you get into your car? Okay, you don't turn on your seatbelt. The buzzer goes off. Okay, so the buzzer has to be annoying enough that you're like that you want to put on your seatbelt. Okay, if it said, "Please put your seatbelt on, you'll be safer," then you'd be like, "Okay, I don't care to listen to that." All right. So after the buzzer goes off, or the little bell just keeps going ding, 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 ding. They're trying to make it some pitch that's a negative pitch that makes you want to put your seatbelt on. I was in a car not too long ago, and it was kind of interesting. And it happened. It actually was a Ford Mustang. They were pretty smart. If you didn't fasten your seatbelt, then the radio and the stereo stopped, and it said, "Fasten your seatbelt to continue the music." And I thought that was pretty good, because what it's saying is the little beeper and the buzzer wasn't negative reinforcement enough. Instead it said, the stereo won't run, and then as soon as you fasten your seatbelt, boom, the stereo runs. So I thought that was pretty good. That's called avoidance conditioning. So what we have now, we're walking into something called operant conditioning. Now, operant conditioning is kind of what we've been saying here. It's positive rewards increase in behavior, and negative rewards decrease in behavior. So when we talk about operant conditioning, then you're looking at, does the positive outweigh the negative, or the negative outweigh the positive? Okay, operant conditioning. Positive rewards increase in behavior, negative rewards decrease in behavior. So for example, there was, you're driving down the road, why do you not speed? Well, there's the thinking, if I speed, I could, be in an accident, I could, get hurt. Okay. Another part would be, I might get a ticket. Well, when I was a kid, I got a ticket, and my first ticket, it was terrible. I had to go tell my dad, and it was like, this is going to be a big event. And it cost me $10, and this was back in the 70s, and gas was 32 cents, and $10 was quite a bit of money. And of course, my dad worked me royally for the $10. I probably earned several hundred to pay for that ticket, but no, I wasn't that bad. But anyway, it was a negative reinforcement. $10 was a lot of money. Well, I didn't get a ticket for years and years later. I was in college. I was driving to college, and it was several hours away. And was driving at night, and I was driving through a town where the speed limit was 45, and I was going like 50 or 55. I got a ticket. I thought to myself, no big deal. I'll just pay the $10 and no problem. And so when the police officer came up, he says, "Do you know you were speeding?" And I said, "Actually, no, I didn't really know." And he said, "Well, I'm going to have to give you a ticket." And I'm like, "Okay, no problem. That's your job." And I took the ticket, and I set it down, and I kept driving. And then a little bit later, I picked up the ticket, and I looked, and the cost was like $100-some. And I was like, oh, so all of a sudden the negative reinforcement was bad enough. I thought it was going to be $10. I didn't know the price of tickets had gone up that much. So once again, negative reinforcements, that's operant conditioning. The more negative it is, the more you don't want to do it. The more positive it is, the more you want that behavior. We're going to talk about Konrad Lorenz for a little bit. Konrad Lorenz, he was a guy that studied geese, and he studied something called imprinting. And he had these geese, an interesting story. There's another movie like this called Fly Away Home that's really similar. But Konrad Lorenz, there were these geese, and they got killed in a fire. And Konrad Lorenz raised the eggs. And the thing about a goose, okay, a gaggle of geese, okay, is that what they do is they imprint. They model the behavior exactly. So Konrad Lorenz would walk around, the geese would walk around. He would flap his hands, they would flap their wings. They would do exactly what he did. And the amazing thing is that geese imprint. They do everything for 1 year and they learn the exact patterns, and then the mom takes off and the geese knows what to do. The whole gaggle of geese, and each goose knows what to do. It knows how to migrate, it knows where to land and what to do. And then the mom goes and it has more babies, and then those geese imprint the next ones. So imprinting means that we mimic the behavior around us. Now, here's the study with this. Does this affect humans? And the answer is yes. More than we would like to know is that learning and behavior is also influenced by imprinting. That a lot of times we will see what other people do and mimic that. A famous experiment was they had a room full of 5-year-old boys and girls. And this sounds like kind of a bad experiment, but the teacher went in, and there was one of those great big blow-up things, and the teacher went in and hit the blow-up thing, and it kind of went over like this, and the kids were just kind of sitting over in the corner where they didn't actually see the person doing that, but out of the side of their eye, because it was such a traumatic thing that the teacher hit this, and I don't know if you've seen this great big blow-up thing, hit this thing and it blew over. So then the kids were just playing, the teacher walked out of the room, and another little kid walked up and hit the blow-up thing, and then another, and it wasn't just boys, and a little girl walks up, and she hits the blow-up thing, and they're like, wow, where did that come from? So we got to watch imprinting, okay? So as we sum up learning and behavior, okay, we want to make a couple of statements here. We want you to know that behavior is complex and not always predictable. Behavior is complex and not always predictable. And also that we are a product. The very first thing I said when we started this unit is genetics plus environment equals who we are. Learning is the environment. So all of the stimuli and all the responses that we have from the environment, that's defined as learning. So learning is more complex, not near as predictable as we hoped it would be in earlier days, but that's an overview of learning and behavioral analysis. So as we get through the rest of the course, we'll refer to learning a lot, but I want you to remember what you've learned in this chapter.